The Demon King invaded the world in the past and released countless demons in it. The divine knights who served God took a stand against him. Their supernatural powers came from a vow to God. However, a substance known as demon miasma stayed in high concentration in some areas, either killing people or turning them into demons by corrupting them. In a certain village, the Divine Knight's ninth branch Vice Commander Kiran tried his best to save people, but he was too late. Suddenly, a red moon appeared, a sign that a powerful demon is about to emerge. Kiran and his accomplice retreat from the area, but underneath all the rubble, they hear a human baby crawling towards them as the only survivor of the massacre. 15 years later, that human baby wound up in an orphanage. His name is Laika, and he is treated as a monster in that orphanage because of the mark across his face. Everyone finds it strange that only a baby survived in the demon attack on the village. Every orphan in the orphanage had their parents killed by demons, so it doesn't help Laika's reputation. Some bullies come up to Laika and spills his food. They even bring up a newly admitted orphan in front of Laika and forces him to apologize because his kind, the monsters, killed this new kid's parents. The weeping kid also accuses Laika. Unwillingly, Laika has to apologize for something that isn't even related to him. Later at night, when he's cleaning the cafeteria, Laika awaits the ceremony that is held once orphans turn 15, making them adults that can leave the orphanage. The ceremony is carried out by a priest from the Divine Knights lineup and tests orphans that wish to join the Divine Knights. In 5 more days, Laika is determined to become a Divine Knight and leave this God-forsaken facility. The day of the selection ceremony arrives, and those that have turned 15, they are required to make a vow as a knight and drink the liquid from the sacred chalice. If the liquid turns blue, then the person cannot become a knight. However, if it turns gold, then they will receive the special power of a knight after drinking and establishing a vow. Furthermore, this is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity, and the vow needs to be an offering to God. All of Laika's bullies make their vows and offerings to God, becoming the Divine Knights as they drink the liquid after it turns to gold. It is now finally Laika's turn to make a vow. Unfortunately for him, even though he wanted to leave the orphanage, he couldn't come up with a single thing to offer in his vow to become a Divine Knight. He starts to panic, and in his desperation, something mysterious ejects out of his body, turning the liquid in the chalice into a weird, slimy purple substance. Even the priest seems to be lost about what this could mean, so he abruptly concludes the ceremony. Laika tries to convince the priest to at least let him drink the ominous liquid, but the other orphans slice off his arm, accusing him of being the monster they suspected him of. Before they could gang up on Laika, an actual monster steps into the cathedral. Its giant legs crush the entire place, and it starts devouring the orphans without a break. Even the priest falls victim to the demonic monster's hunger. Laika and his bullies stare at awe as the real demon towers over them. They try to run away, but their vows were absolute, and now they cannot abandon the fight with a demon. Laika sees the demon devour his bullies one by one, even though they all try to attack it at once with their newfound powers. Laika, being the only one remaining in the cathedral, becomes hopeless. The demon detects him and attacks him with its tongue. In a last-ditch attempt, Laika sees the chalice still filled up with that ominous liquid and quickly drinks it. Anything is better than death for him, but before the liquid takes its effects, Laika gets consumed by the demon. Fortunately, before he gets fully digested, his powers kick in, and he explodes out of the demon's body, looking like a completely new person. His body feels cold, he feels unusual, but the power within him overflows. He then makes light work of the rampaging demon by using his newly found OP powers. After the battle finishes, he reverts back to his original self due to being exhausted. As he catches his breath, knocked down on his knees, one of the surviving bullies gets angry at Laika's incredible feat. As Laika realizes that his severed arm has grown back, a huge sword comes crashing down and penetrates the demon's body. Someone screams the words "purification," exorcising the demon's body. Atop the large sword stands a beautiful maiden knight, who lectures Laika that leaving a large body of the demon like that causes demon miasma to spread across the city. She apologizes for being late and asks Laika about the killer of the demon. He looks up at the shining divine knight in complete admiration. The lady is the divine knight called Arthur, and she is really impressed by Laika, who took down such a demon on his own. Laika admires Arthur's sword and power. Arthur's squad finally catch up, complaining about her leaving them behind. Realizing that Arthur is a divine knight's commander, he jumps on the opportunity to convince her to take him in, so that he can leave the orphanage. However, one of the bully orphans interrupt him out of nowhere, begging Arthur to kill him as he is a supposed monster. Arthur gets mad at the bully orphan for talking down on Laika, even if he is the beholder of an unknown power and the sole survivor of that village 15 years ago. She flicks the bully away with just her fingers, breaking his nose. She then turns towards Laika, inquiring about how he received the power of a divine knight without making a vow, when it shouldn't be possible. Laika pleads his case that the demon interrupted his ceremony, but he was still able to drink the liquid from the chalice which gave him his powers. She wonders what he actually offered and to whom. She then asks Laika to show her the power he used to defeat the demon, but he is unable to draw it out willingly. Arthur speeds up the process by flinging him into the sky to try and force the power out of him, or else he'll just fall to his death. As he panics during the freefall, a sky-eater bird shows up from behind and devours him whole in just one bite. Arthur forgot about the sky being the habitat of these monsters, and now the situation is a bit tricky. Arthur's companion proceeds to fly towards the monster, but she stops him because this is a chance to see Laika's powers. Inside the sky-eater bird's stomach, Laika finds himself stuck in acid and in between digestive organs that are alive. The organs try to devour him, but his will to survive, whether it's the orphanage or this monster, acts as a trigger for him to unleash his power. Outside, Arthur and her companion discuss about Laika's power being useful or not. Suddenly, the sky-eater bird explodes from within, and out comes Laika, fully transformed. He lands safely using his magic and reverts back to normal. Arthur's companion moves to check up on him, while she praises his skill to be on the same level as a vice commander. Turns out, her companion is Kieran, the guy who saved Laika from the village 15 years ago, though he feels Laika would have been better off dead at the time. Arthur then turns towards the bully orphan and tells him that she is taking Laika under her wing to keep his power in check. She also reminds him to stop being racist because humans have little time left before a huge crack in the world occurs. Laika wakes up in a flying carriage, accompanied by the Divine Knights. They just grabbed him along for the ride before he woke up because they are on a tight schedule, which he doesn't mind as his wish to become a Divine Knight became true. Arthur officially welcomes him to the team as a temporary member because they are unsure about the nature of his powers, and his actions that follow will determine his fate. He accepts it, as long as he gets to leave the orphanage, which is now disassembled because a portion of it was destroyed, and the remaining members will be sent to different facilities. Arthur regrets that so many new Covenant receivers died in the attack, and wonders if Laika had anyone to say goodbye to, but he denies because they just bullied him. Arthur tells him that they are now going to the headquarters in the holy capital of Allah. Many cadets and knights are stationed at the headquarters in case a calamity from the mythic age occurs. Laika seems lost, so she points him towards a crack in the sky. Long ago, a rift appeared in the great sky, making way for demonic essence and beasts from another world. Their leader was the Demon King, the king of the other world who had a desire to possess. He summoned his avatars called the Celestial Demons and wreaked havoc on the life of this world, pouring demonic essence in all of the land. The Night Order of the time managed to send the Demon King back and sealed the Celestial Demons in the north, south, east, and west of the continent, but this just shrank the land that humans were able to live on. Arthur informs Laika that the crack is growing, and while they have no idea about where it leads, the Night Order still stay prepared to fight it if the time comes. Arthur violating Laika's personal space while complimenting his power and his potential makes our boy very nervous. Her interest in his flame sword, the light in his eyes when he transforms, the explosive fire attacks, and his regeneration all drive her insane to the point that she licks his sweat, almost like she is drunk on the thought of Laika's mysterious power helping them in battle. After that weirdly intimate exchange, she throws him off the carriage for a mission. This time, however, Laika manages to do a superhero landing without getting hurt. He immediately gets up, surprised by his own body, so Arthur informs him that forming the Covenant gives 2 powers to a person. Special ability, which is the divine arts, like her sword and his transformation. Also protection, which gives a person advanced physical attributes that surpass any ordinary human. She adds that the Night Order just doesn't kill monsters and demons, they also have to clean up the trash. She takes her leave without elaborating further, leaving Laika to his own devices. Confused at first, he turns around to see bandits in the forest, hiding until the Night Order leaves. They spot Laika and immediately start to agonize him. While he tries to deduce who these guys are, they insult him by calling him an orphan and plan to sell him. Laika realizes that the trash Arthur talked about is human traffickers because they have a bunch of kids tied up as slaves, and now they want him to be one too. Looking at the poor kids cry reminds him of his days at the orphanage, and that gets him extremely pissed off. While the bandits keep insisting that he gives up and becomes a slave, Laika demands that they let the children go. The bandits doesn't heed his warning, so he repeats that as a part of the night order, he was given the task to quickly get rid of trash by his commander, and he plans to do so quickly. The bandits jump Laika all at once, even though he just claimed to be a divine knight. Laika manages to dodge all of their strikes swiftly and even releases the children in one motion. He turns towards the bandits, absolutely furious. They try to attack him with crossbows, but he is too fast for them. He then quickly transforms willingly this time and proceeds to make light work of the bandits. He burns every one of them to cinders, but still feels like something is off. One of the bandits takes a child hostage, threatening to kill the child if Laika takes another step. Seeing the bandit slowly driving the knife into the child's throat, Laika surrenders, but the bandit refuses to back down because the children are his valuable merchandise. He justifies his human trafficking by calling it a good use of children who were either left alone to die or their parents were killed by demons. The bandit doesn't realize that he is just digging his own grave by continuing to talk about his disgusting business because before he knows it, his arm with the dagger gets severed by Laika's magic. He screams in agony because the fire burns him, while Laika Aura farms from afar as he didn't even move and beheads the bandit. Turns out, even Laika didn't know that he could conjure a whip to attack from afar, which makes him like the divine arts even more. He goes towards the children and tries to console them because they are extremely terrified of what they went through. However, all of them warm up to him when he turns down his fire magic, though as soon as he reverts to normal, he collapses out of exhaustion. Later, before the sun sets, Kieran waits by the entrance of the headquarters. He sees the children dragging Laika's passed-out body and quickly jumps to help them carry him. They inform Kieran that Laika told them to bring him here as soon as they reach the city, while he shamelessly sleeps. As Kieran drags him in, the Divine Knights look upon them. Fran, the second branch chief, finds Laika's sleeping face adorable and gives him the approval. The deputy chief Kenneth of the second branch lets out a sigh over Fran's childish decisions and rejects Laika. Grift, the fourth branch chief, finds Laika's tendency to exhaust himself while cleaning the trash to be absurd. The sixth branch deputy chief, Jack, feels disappointed at Laika's appearance because he expected more from a renowned monster-turned-assassin. Arthur listens to their complaints while sitting on her throne and commands them to give Laika a second chance since it was his first job. She tells everyone to be less harsh on him moving forward because he has a lot more room to improve, which is worth the wait. A gigantic buffet is set up for Laika at the headquarters, which makes him feel extremely excited to finally be able to eat real food as much as he wants without anyone getting in his way. He devours everything on the table like it's his last day in the world, so the maid advises him to slow down as the food isn't going anywhere. He is just happy to be there, and also appreciates his new uniform. However, his meal is interrupted by Kenneth, who rudely gets up in his face to assess whether Laika is useful or not. Kenneth then orders him to quietly follow him to someplace, which makes Laika irritated as he questions his rudeness. Kenneth ignores him and even ousts Fran, who was disguised as the maid that was serving food to Laika, which shocks him. Laika follows Fran and Kenneth to a dark forest outside the headquarters, but seeing how tense he is, Fran reassures him that they plan to return with everyone safe and sound. He is still surprised to see how laid-back Fran is for being a branch commander. They finally reach the mission's destination where Fran tells him about the monster sighting at the outskirts of the capital. Kenneth adds that the monster didn't do much damage, but they still need to get rid of whatever is causing trouble. However, their aim is to make Laika work for it because they want to test him, despite the mission requiring the second branch's vice and first commander. Fran tells him that this is basically an evolution of him because all of the commanders are debating about what to do with him, which send Laika into panic mode as he doesn't want to lose this new life. Fran pats him on the head and wishes him good luck as she expects good things from him because Arthur praised his skills in front of everyone. This gives Laika the confidence to defeat the monster, but Kenneth crushes his hope by reminding him that the kids carried him to the headquarters. Kenneth makes him more angry by saying that his right to be in the Knight's Order will be revoked if either of them deem him useless, which Kenneth expects him to be. Laika calls out his rude behavior, but Fran diffuses the situation by revealing that Kenneth's covenant makes him act like a scum, which just makes whatever he insults he made, his honest opinions. Kenneth then reminds Laika that he doesn't have a covenant yet, which is supposed to be the heart and price that one offers for their powers, and the greater the sacrifice, the greater the power they get. While Laika comprehends the value of a covenant, Kenneth blitz right behind him and holds him at gunpoint, informing him that 1/3 of the recruits die in just 6 months while fighting monsters or breaking their covenant. So how can Laika be at such a place without sacrificing something of his own? However, it doesn't matter to Laika that he doesn't have a covenant, because he was finally able to escape that orphanage when Arthur took him in, gave him a proper bed and food. No amount of covenant can measure up to the blessings he has received, and he fully plans on keeping them for himself. During the monologuing, Laika brings out his firepower and melts Kenneth's divine arts tool easily, which terrifies the rude brat to the point he gets aggressive and prepares another divine tool. However, before the two go at each other, Fran stops them and commands them to divert their energy and focus on the matter at hand. She charges up as well, as the three of them find themselves surrounded by quite a lot of monsters. As the three of them prepare themselves to fight off the monsters, one of them jumps towards them with a vicious attack, but they all manage to dodge it. However, the monster's tail struck a tree and melted it almost instantly. Laika seems shocked at this occurrence, so Fran warns him to stay clear of the tail on that monster, as it is covered in a poison that is fast and deadly. With that said, Fran leaves the battlefield to look for the demon that is commanding so many monsters, while Laika barely manages to find his footing against the continuously attacks of the monsters. However, Kenneth doesn't mind, as he calmly materializes his divine tool and shoots a monster right behind Laika, and schools him about the Night Order's job being unlike a picnic. Laika gets pissed at Kenneth for looking down him, and brings out his flame sword to take down the monster easily. The two stand with their backs towards each other, preparing to begin their killing spree. They take down many monsters swiftly and with ease, using multiple techniques and skills. However, Kenneth's kill count is much more than Laika, which he has to admit is impressive because, as the vice commander, his skill with a gun is greater than a sword. Laika is unable to find an efficient way to use his flame power because if he goes too hard with it, he becomes exhausted, though keeping them less intense is still putting him through a lot of strain. Kenneth notices Laika resting for a bit and commands him to sit down under a shade or something if he is exhausted. Laika gets frustrated with all the mocking, but Kenneth has been relentlessly attacking without a break, which shows the gap between a vice commander and a newbie. Laika just asks Kenneth about his technique. Because Kenneth cannot lie, he tells Laika that his divine tool generates a bullet using the mana. This helps Laika figure out that Kenneth's powers work differently in the way that his mana is used only when a bullet is generated, whilst Laika's sword requires constant flow of mana. Knowing he cannot make a gun even with this knowledge, Laika comes up with a new technique. Seeing Laika charge up his mana recklessly, Kenneth decides that he doesn't belong in the Knight's Order because he is unable to think of another strategy, nor is he adaptable. He plans on reporting this to Fran, but when he looks upwards, his jaw drops. Laika creates a huge fire arrow that covers the entire forest. His idea was that instead of using petty tricks or even caring about mana cost and efficiency, it's better to just go all out. Laika smashes the huge fire arrow straight to the ground, decimating everyone and everything in huge radius. Kenneth managed to dodge the attack, but when the dust settles, he nervously looks at the giant crater caused by Laika in the middle of the forest. Kenneth goes back on the ground and sees Laika laying down, completely spent. Laika brags about taking down more monsters than Kenneth in just one blast, but Kenneth is more focused in some strange energy coming out of the monsters' dismembered bodies. Thread-like strands from their bodies dig into the ground, and the ground starts to twitch. Kenneth immediately catches on that this is a trap, but both of them react too late as the ground beneath them collapses, and a huge monster opens its mouth to devour them both. Laika protects the two of them by creating a makeshift zipline using his fire magic, stretching the glowing cord across the air and clinging to it just slightly above the monster's cavernous mouth. The flickering line burns with unstable heat, his last desperate attempt to hold them aloft. The monster had been far more cunning than either of them expected. It had deliberately lured the two boys into this specific spot, using the scattered corpses of the creatures it had devoured earlier as bait. The remains were stacked and positioned in such a way that neither Laika nor Kenneth could ignore them, pulling them directly into its trap. But Laika's mana burns out. His vision blurs, his body heavy, and the fiery zipline shatters into sparks before vanishing entirely. With nothing to hold them, the two plummet straight down into the waiting maw, They land on the creature's massive, slimy tongue, which instantly coils around them like a living prison. The foul stench of rotting blood surrounds them. Both of them thrash and struggle, their weapons slipping from their hands, but no matter how much they fight, the monster's grip refuses to break. Panic rises in their throats, the taste of fear bitter. It seems hopeless, yet just when despair is about to consume them, their saving grace arrives. Fran appears above the pit, descending without hesitation. She leaps directly into danger, her form cutting through the shadows like a streak of silver light. In her hands gleams her absurdly oversized spoon. With a force that should be impossible, she scoops down into the pit, cleaving through slime and darkness, and in one motion hauls the writhing tongue upward, tearing it away and exposing the monster's true body beneath. Its grotesque form writhes, revealed at last, but Fran wastes no time. With swift, precise swings, she chops it apart as though it were nothing more than meat prepared for a feast. In only moments, the demon is reduced to fragments, and both boys are freed. It turns out Fran had deliberately left Laika and Kenneth to face the danger alone. The monster would never have revealed itself if she had remained close by. Her plan was to let it grow bold, to let it believe the boys were helpless prey. And though the two nearly lost their lives, she is glad to see that in the midst of it all, they began, however reluctantly, to fight side by side. Even if they still hated each other, something fragile had formed. Laika and Kenneth tear free from the sticky remnants of the tongue, coughing and gasping for air. Laika looks at Fran in awe. He realizes now fully that she is unbelievably strong. Her playful, sometimes careless personality hides a power that is beyond his comprehension. She had dispatched something so massive, so overwhelming, with terrifying ease. Yet what shocks him most is not the strength itself, but what follows. As the dust settles, Fran kneels before the mangled remains. She clasps her hands together, her face somber, and prays softly for the demon she has just killed. She explains, her voice carrying a weight of sorrow, that these monsters were once people, innocent souls twisted by prolonged exposure to corrupted energy. To her, killing them is not a victory, it is a burden. Laika can hardly believe it. Kenneth, meanwhile, narrows his eyes at the remains. Why was such a demon lurking so close to the city? And why here of all places would there be such an unusual concentration of energy? His suspicion sharpens, unease settling over him. Fran answers calmly that it is not completely unusual for warped reserves of energy to appear at the fringes of inhabited regions, but before she can say more, her expression hardens. Her senses flare. She detects something far beyond what either boy can comprehend. "Run!" she commands sharply. "Both of you, run now!" But it is already too late. A crushing weight falls over them. In an instant, all three are frozen in place, pinned by an overwhelming pressure that grips their bodies and souls alike. The air thickens until breathing feels like drowning. From the shadows, a figure enters the field, a hooded entity whose presence radiates nothing but malice. The stranger's voice drips with fury as he surveys the scene. He expresses his frustrations at their act of defiance. How dare they destroy his creation, the demon he had carefully cultivated? His loathing of humanity spills forth, declaring humans as nothing more than deceitful, disgusting creatures unworthy of survival. Fran, even under the weight of his presence, forces herself to speak, demanding to know who he is. But with nothing more than the flick of his finger, the hooded entity presses all three of them into the ground, crushing them as though they were insects. Laika and Kenneth are utterly helpless, powerless against this overwhelming being. The entity then extends his hand, and to their horror, the butchered fragments of the demon writhe and reform. The pieces stitch themselves together, twisting into a stronger, more grotesque form. What emerges is no longer the same monster. It is sharper, larger, its vile appearance refined into something born purely of hatred. With the entity's power still active, the reborn demon advances. Its steps shake the ground, and in moments it looms over Fran. She tries to rise, but her body refuses to move. It seizes her effortlessly, lifting her like a rag doll. Its gaping jaws open wide, ready to devour her whole. Fran, for the first time, is unable to resist. Death is only a breath away. Laika struggles desperately against the pressure. He claws at the ground, trying to push himself up, but the force is too much. His body trembles and burns. He is powerless. Yet in his mind, a memory surfaces. Fran standing before him, shielding him, smiling even when she was exhausted. Her words of encouragement, her laughter, her kindness, they strike him at once. Something inside him breaks. Or perhaps something awakens. An unstoppable surge bursts forth from within his core. His body erupts with mana, wild, uncontrollable, vast. Flames engulf him, the ground beneath cracking apart. Laika rises at last, his eyes blazing. The air trembles as he unleashes a power far beyond anything he has ever known. And with that power, he sets his gaze on the monster before him, ready to destroy it completely. The demon almost devoured Fran, but the sudden burst of mana by Luca put everyone in shock. Using his anger, Laika manages to stand up inside the gravitational field and one-shots the demon that held up Fran. Immediately after he kills the demon, his adrenaline blows over and he faints. The mysterious entity seems impressed by thus incredible feat of strength by Laika, so he uses his magic to examine Laika more closely. The entity realizes that the flame Laika uses is not of this world, and then analyzes the color of Laika's pupil. Turns out, Laika somehow made a covenant with a god from another world, and even offered something so odd that even the mysterious entity finds it very amusing. While the entity enjoys his little discovery, Laika uses the last bit of his strength to stab him through the chest to finally shut him up for good. Doing that destroyed the gravitational field, and everything goes back to normal with the entity defeated. Fran quickly removes the entity's clothes, only to find a puppet inside it which was being controlled from somewhere afar. Kenneth worries about Laika, but Fran reassures him that he has just passed out. Fran then figures out that it was none other than Ruler Tempest who was controlling that puppet because he is the magic master, the only human able to create puppets that strong. Meanwhile, in his humble home, the Tempest's sleep is interrupted by a little messenger girl. She complains about him being lazy, when he was actually terrorizing Laika's group and found something interesting. The girl and Tempest share a cup of tea, and await something that is about to come from the rift in the sky. Kenneth and Fran carry Laika back to the capital while he is still passed out. But something about the Tempest said about Laika offering an unusual thing for a covenant runs through his mind. The Night Order surrounds Laika's unconscious body as they come up with a consensus about his future. Fran's report about Laika having a contract with a foreign god gives rise to dispute amongst the group. They are worried that his covenant goes against the very foundation of the Knight's Order, but his divine instrument was extremely powerful for him to be disposed of. Kieran jumps in for Laika's defense as well, rejecting the claims of the mysterious entity. The Vice Commander Gavin states that they do not need an uncertain element in the Knight's Order because the risk of the enemy being the Magic Master is way too great. Arthur questions Fran about her opinion of Laika during the battle. She states that they all would have died without Laika's help because he was the only one capable, but she is still unsure about his lack of control of the power. Gavin adds that Laika consistently loses consciousness and exhausts himself after transforming, meaning that he truly lacks control. Arthur assesses the situation, which basically means that they need to check whether Laika can control his power and whether he is a fit for the Knight's Order. Keeping that in mind, she refers to Gavin for a trial for Laika. He suggests that Laika has to go through the trial of the guarded flame at least. Everyone becomes shocked, but Arthur seems okay with it. She commands Jack to heal Laika up good enough for him to be able to deal with the hell they are sending him to. Later at night, Laika gets nightmares about the mysterious entity laughing at him for making a contract with a foreign god, offering something that has to do with his childhood. Disgusted by the voice, Laika wakes up screaming and finds Kenneth reading a book beside him. The two then share a wholesome moment where Kenneth thanks Laika for saving them, which puts a smile on Laika's face because he knows Kenneth is always honest about his feelings. Suddenly, Kieran marches in the room to deliver the bombshell of a news to Laika regarding his future. He reveals that Laika has to go through the trial of the guarded flame, which shooks Kenneth to the core. He tries to argue for Laika's sake because he knows how dangerous that trial is for a noob who just got here. Kieran tries to make things better by informing them that he is the official's administrator of the trial. Laika, completely lost, wonders if he will be an official member if he passes. However, Kenneth tells him that this test is beyond his capabilities, as it is for executive candidates, which one normally isn't able to attend without recommendations from 2 or 3 branch commanders, based on one's works. This is basically an execution planned for Laika by the Knight's Order, and even Kieran agrees. He adds that only a handful pass the trial, 1/3 go crazy, and the rest just die. To even attempt the trial, one must be prepared to die. Though Laika is glad to put his life on the line for this place as it is the only one he has got. 5 days later, Kieran and Laika stand in front of the cave, the trial's spot. Kieran explains the rules that this trial consists of two parts. First is to survive 3 days in the cave, and the second is to not let the embers of the candle he just handed him, burnt by mana, to run out. The candle is extremely hot, and he has to protect it for 3 days from the monsters attracted by it. With that said, Kieran wishes Laika good luck, and the trial begins. Laika explores the cave, and the deeper he goes, the harder it becomes to breathe because of the magic essence. This cave has a higher concentration of that essence, even for North, where it is supposed to be already dense, which is why more monsters get attracted to this place. His first task is to survive the wave of monsters for 3 days, and the second is to not let the candle's flame die out under any circumstances. He has to constantly battle monsters while simultaneously protecting the flame. But he also has to use his mana in such an efficient way that the candle doesn't run out due to high mana consumption, which results in higher flame. He quickly clams himself down to reduce the output of mana, bringing the flame down to low heat. A swarm of monsters surround him in the cave, and until the bell rings 3 days later, he has to survive. Surviving will induct him in the Knight's Order, but failing will result in his death. However, the sheer number of monsters make it seem impossible to pass. Kieran and Kenneth watch over him through a magic water mirror, but they worry that Laika is bound to fail as it is too soon for him. Kieran understands that Laika had to go through this trial if some members of the Order are to accept him as a knight. Kenneth still worries for Laika, but Kieran has an underlying feeling that he will survive the trial. Meanwhile, Laika comes up with a strategy that instead of running away for 3 full days, he will light a huge fire by feeding his mana to the candle, drawing out all monsters in one place, and taking them out all at once. His plan works. The entire army of monsters turns to ash, and the cave gets engulfed in flames. Laika seems glad that he was successful, but Kenneth worries that defeating the monsters first before the 3 days are over is unheard of. Kieran, however, feels proud of what Laika is going for and looks forward to it. Suddenly, his smile fades away as he sees something unusual in the cave with Laika, realizing that Gavin tweaked something in the trial to sabotage Laika. Laika, meanwhile, feels relieved that he took a lot of the monsters out, and now he has to make the candle last for 3 days. As he focuses on making the flame smaller, a red beam barely misses him and strikes the cave. He turns around to find a robot with multiple hands walking towards him. Laika doesn't know about the robot he has facing, but Kieran is aware that it is the Berserk. Developed by the Knight's Order themselves, Berserk is the robot to fight any kind of monster and kill it, but now it is after Laika. Kieran calls Gavin to complain about the appearance of the Berserk in the trial, even though it's an experimental machine used to take out monsters. Gavin acts ignorant and claims that he just unleashed Berserk in the forest nearby, and the cave attracted it on its own. Gavin warns Kieran to not go and help Laika, even if he wants to, because this trial is meant to put knights through unexpected difficulties and unfairness, and overcoming those hardships is what will determine his fate as a knight. Kieran hangs up on Gavin out of frustration, which is when Fran, dressed up as a maid, enters Gavin's office with a cup of tea. He dislikes seeing a branch commander acting as a lowly person, but she just carries on with the act, asking him about sugar, but he refuses. She spots that Gavin is in a good mood, which he doesn't deny, because he is glad to see an uncertainty like Laika almost wiped out of the Knight's Order. He uses a lizard monster to observe the trial. Laika tries to avoid getting hit by the Berserk's beams, because even using his fireballs does no damage to the machine. Instead, it just makes the candle run out faster. All he can do is run away, because he has no room on the candle, plus using fire is draining him out while the machine is unaffected by it. He jumps in a pit trying to figure out some sort of weakness in the machine. However, as soon as he stops, the machine stops attacking him as well. To test, he takes a small step, and the Berserk immediately fires. This makes Laika realize that the machine is attacking him based on his movement, and now he has a plan of attack. He dodges multiple beams of the Berserk, trying to close in the distance between them. He then slides underneath the machine, causing it to slice itself in half because its body came in between the beam's path. Using this moment of temporary malfunction of the machine, Laika takes a leap on the air and smashes the head of the Berserk. He whips out the inner wiring of the machine to completely destroy it, and finally rest easy with a slight bruise to his face. Gavin stands up in frustration and commands Fran to give him several cubes of sugar to calm himself down. She obliges, while also cheering for Laika. Gavin sends Fran away because he wants to brood alone about his plans getting foiled by Laika, But he is still sure that the cave is not going to let Laika do what he wants, as it is a harsher place than one realizes. On the day 3 of the trial of the Guardian Flame, Laika tries to catch his breath after being chased around the cave for so long. The bell hasn't rang yet, but his candle is still lit. However, he doesn't have much of it left, and with his stamina exhausted, he can only wait for the trial to be over. Suddenly, he notices the monster's flesh moving. At first, he thought he was hallucinating, but the more closer it gets, the more Laika panics. Every piece of flesh gets very close and regenerates into the monster it once was. Unable to figure out the reason for this occurrence, Laika forces himself to get up and face the monsters, but fortunately for him, the bell rings. However, the swarm of monsters surround him, and he has to make his way towards the exit with the candle still lit to pass the trial. He sprints towards the exit with the monsters following right behind him. The flame is so tiny that even a little blow will put it out. With the light at the end of the tunnel in sight, Laika gives it his all to reach it, even when a monster managed to inflict a grave wound on his back. He slips right as he escapes the cave, but the monsters still try and leap at him. Thankfully, Kieran arrives at the nick of time and blows every monster away. Finally saved from danger, Laika passes out in Kieran's arms from all the exhaustion and wounds, but he receives Kieran's approval. Laika wakes up a while later, on a throne, surrounded by the Knight's Order, facing Arthur in the ceremonial chamber. The rite of passage through the trial of guarded flame begins, and Arthur reveals the arms and vows of everyone present by the Order of the Knights, to prove that they trust Laika, the newest divine knight. Kieran steps forwards and reveals his vow was to never take a family. Fran's vow is to forsake food for life. Kenneth's vow is to never lie. Griff's vow was to offer his right arm to God. Jack's vow was to remain a virgin for life. And Gavin's vow was to never sleep again. However, his second vow, his shield, was given to him through the vow that he is to never forgive traitors of the Order. Finally, Arthur reveals her vow, and it is that she doesn't have a gender. Every knight stepped up and revealed their vows, surprising Laika with their convictions. Now it's his turn to reveal his vow in arms, as a sign of trust. Everyone awaits his response, so Laika first reveals his transformation as his arms. Then he reverts back to normal, but is unable to reveal his vow because he himself isn't sure. He explains that the power he possesses is unknown. Even when the Tempest laughed about the thing he sacrificed, he still wants to gain everyone's trust through his actions. He wants to become stronger than everyone to never let a scene like at his orphanage come to pass. Everyone seems proud of his answer. Arthur states that the flame of life in front of them needs to find strength, and so they accept his resolve as proof of trust. With that, Laika finally gets inducted in the Divine Knight's Order and every salutes him. Bright light illuminates him as he becomes official. Later, Gavin questions Arthur's decision to add Laika in the Order, even though he has no vow. Arthur reminds him that it was Gavin's idea to accept Laika if he passes the trial, and so him risking his life without a vow should be enough of a resolve. Gavin's main concern is how unstable Laika's transformation is, and that might cause trouble in the future, but Arthur tells him to not worry too much because that flame of Laika's can become their strength. As it grows stronger, the more closer he is to death. Gavin freezes in place, while Laika and friends celebrate.